that jam or malfunction or suck the votes without a trace.
As we look at our election system, I think it's fair to say that there are many legitimate questions about its accuracy, about its integrity, and they're not confined to the state of Ohio.
Because of these and many other examples, all documented in the press, I am joining with Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones to cast the light of truth on a flawed system.
There is no reason at a time when we have enormous battles taking place ideologically all across the globe, at a time when we're trying to make certain that we encourage democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places throughout the world, that we have the legitimacy of our elections challenged, rightly or wrongly, by people who are not certain as to whether our processes are fair and just.
Ohio is the objection. I'm from Ohio, I'm raising the objection. But I anticipate you will also hear from some of my colleagues from other states who had similar situations. Now, it's easy to say, well, it happened in Ohio, it happened in Michigan, it happened in Arizona, and so let's not worry about it because it happened everywhere.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So Donald Trump got indicted again for the fourth time, and we live in probably the craziest times we ever could have imagined. And it really does feel like watching a bad movie. You know, it's hard to watch this stuff without thinking about our country, you know, thinking about what our flag means and, you know, the values that we are supposed to represent. You know, a lot of people fought for those values, and it feels like they're fading, if you ask me. And even worse than that, it feels like a lot of people on the left are really, really pleased with how things are going, which is probably got to be the most concerning thing about any of this stuff. And there's this belief that progressives, they're using power to silence opponents. And some people are convinced that our rights are slipping away. And, you know, is this super dramatic? I don't know. You know, maybe it is, but it's a sentiment. And a lot of us share this feeling. A lot of us have this sentiment. So what's going on with Trump's indictment in Georgia? And what's that all about? As far as we can really tell, based on what they provided us, it's all about a phone call where he said that he needed to find votes. And some interpret this as calling for fraud, but context matters. And remember, that same call, you know, was public knowledge just back when it happened. So, but now suddenly there's charges based on it. Why now? And another point they keep harping on is the so-called fake electors. But in reality, these were just alternate electors, which is common practice in case that, you know, election results change, or, you know, there's a change in the election. This is not some Trump invented super fraud. It's a legit part of the system. But guys, before I continue, I have a public service announcement from some of our Democrat friends talking about those very same electors. And now they want to put Donald Trump in prison over the same stuff. Take a look at this.
38 members of the Electoral College. You
and just 36 other conscientious Republican electors can make a difference
by voting your conscience on December 19th.
And thereby shaping the future of our nation.
I'm not asking you to vote for Hillary Clinton.
I'm not asking you to vote for Hillary Clinton.
I'm not asking you to vote for Hillary Clinton.
As you know, the Constitution gives electors the right to vote for any eligible person.
Any eligible person, no matter which party they belong to.
But it should certainly be someone you consider especially competent.
Especially competent to serve as President of the United States of America.
By voting your conscience, you and other brave Republican electors can give the House.
But it wasn't some, you know, left-wing America-hating democracy endangering super PAC. It was all over the news as well. You know, and watching this, it really takes you back and reminds you that they hated this guy before he even set foot in the White House, before he even had a chance to show if he was or wasn't going to be good. They were out to get him. He was already guilty of the unforgivable crime of denying Hillary Clinton her rightful place on the throne.
People who are pushing very hard who think that because of some of the constitutional perils of the Emoluments Clause, because of the popular vote margin, because of a fundamental, they think, threat to liberal democracy, that electors should be persuaded and pressured on Monday to part with what their pledge is and vote against Donald Trump.
Yes, they absolutely should do that. Absolutely. I believe right now that there are electors They only need 38 of them who have a conscience or who are worried about a man who won't attend the daily security briefings, who we now know Russia was trying to help get elected.
So after seeing this, man, does what they're doing seem a bit overboard to you? And let me know in the comments. And really, speaking of overboard, it's not just about Trump, but they're targeting his team and his lawyers too. And what are the charges? A mix of conspiracy, racketeering, solicitation, all favorite charges of overbearing government prosecutions because the burden of proof in those types of cases is just so low. And here's the wildest part. Somehow the charges were leaked before they even became official. A charging document was circulated before the grand jury had even voted. And someone has got to explain that.
The Fulton County Clerk's Office that was circulated online with charges against former President Donald Trump. That fictitious document matched exactly the charges that we now see in this indictment. Can you tell us more about that document leak? Because now you have the former president's lawyers who are saying that this is emblematic of a serious problem with your office.
No, I can't tell you anything about what you refer to. What I can tell you is that we had a grand jury here in Fulton County. They deliberated till almost 8 o'clock, if not right after 8 o'clock. An indictment was returned. It was true billed, and you now have an indictment. I am not an expert on clerks' duties.
So the lady in charge of the office is not only clueless about how an indictment leaked before it even existed, but she also doesn't seem all that concerned. And this is the biggest thing in that building that the people in that building have ever been a part of. And they can't manage to get the paperwork right. But that's not even the craziest thing surrounding this event. What's crazier than watching indictments from the future is watching Hillary Clinton and Rachel Maddow on MSNBC discussing election integrity and the essence of truth. Coming from them, considering their history with those exact topics, I don't even know how to put it into words. Maddow, she played a key role in the whole collusion narrative, interviewing Clinton, who literally friggin' invented it, pretending like they're just sitting there talking about it like the world is not aware. And I guess when you're talking about it on MSNBC, those viewers probably aren't aware. It's got to be seen to believe. But before we dive into that interview, guys, some straight talk. People often throw around phrases like no one's above the law, right? But if we genuinely live by that, wouldn't there be questions about every president, not just Trump? Now, I'm just pointing out, this seems a double standard. If we're going to hold everyone to the same standard, it should be consistent across the board. I'm not picking sides on any of this stuff, but Bush invaded Iraq on less than perfect grounds. Obama sentenced almost 4,000 people to death without any due process. But no one wants to talk about any of that. We just want to talk about Trump and some phone calls that take a mind reader to truly understand. And obviously the timing of these indictments, it'll feel peculiar to some, but we all know what's going on here. And let's just see this interview for ourselves, draw our own conclusions. But first, guys, thanks to everyone who's been subscribing and commenting. We really appreciate the support. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. Help us with the algorithm. Help us grow. Every time you do one of those things, the leftist loses their wings.
Learned by living it in these past few years is that democracy needs the trust of the people. That's right. That the system of democracy at its heart is the idea that the people get to decide how we are governed. And if we no longer believe that our will is effectuated through the system, if bad actors tell us falsely that every election is stolen and that the only way an election is trustworthy is if they come out on top of it, then something, it tells you something not just about that person or that moment. it maybe wounds us as a democracy and in a way that is hard to repair. What do you think about how we get better after the wounds that have
it is
been
really
inflicted
tough
on us
to
through this
take
process?
Well, I think
that at face value.
the truth matters.
They're discussing the importance of truth, yet there's this cloud of conspiracies that her team is absolutely responsible for. They managed to turn government machinery into a tool against political rivals, and now she's on TV discussing truth and integrity. You can't make that stuff up. That's the sort of thing that can only be done on MSNBC. It's almost impossible to watch the two people most responsible for the whole Russian narrative just sitting there talking as if there's some sort of guards of what's right and what's decent. It's crazy. And how the mushy brain freaking viewers of MSNBC don't see straight through this stuff, I have no idea. They want to talk about elections. How inconsistent is that? After the election results began rolling in, Hillary Clinton herself appeared in an interview with a friend on the left and suggested that Joe Biden shouldn't concede under any circumstances, even before the results were even finalized. Yet, when the roles are reversed and it's Trump, well, now it's a crime.
Not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch.
Donald Trump mentioning that he believes the election might be a bit sketchy, and he's pointing to stuff coming out right now, coming out of Michigan, and obviously we'll say less, curious happenings in Pennsylvania. That's one of the states that circumvented all of their own state laws and constitution to change the rules for voting. And he's also highlighted, the mass mail-in voting thing. Even the New York Times once talked about how mail-in votes had a higher rejection rate compared to in-person votes. Yet here we are with the mass mail-in strategy, and some of the results, for lack of a better way to put it, were strange. And, looking at the entire case, it feels more like political drama than a real crime, and the charges, they're more creative than anything you even see on TV. Challenging election results you think are shady is not a crime. Never was. It never will be. If it were, there'd be a ton of politicians literally behind bars. In fact, probably every sitting, serving Democrat, there's a strategy, they seemingly push on the left, where they back a certain legal position with the hope of cornering their rivals. And think about it, why pour billions into a presidential race when you can just target smaller roles and just control the narrative? It's sneaky, but it's brilliant, and here's the thing, guys. The state of our country, where we're at right now, is concerning, and it feels like shaky ground to me. Both sides are convinced the other side is wrong. It's a never-ending tug of war, that's the only way to put it. It's a tug of war, and it's exhausting. There's this thought, even if you don't like someone, it doesn't mean that you target them unjustly. And the media, their hands are not clean. We remember the issues, right? Obama had issues. Every past administration had issues. And if we're going to hold Trump accountable, why is the media not looking at everyone with the same lens? But no, of course not. Because this is not about what's right. This is not about just. This is not, no one's got any interest in any of that. They have a vested and singular interest in one guy. So what happens after all this? Say Trump does face consequences. Does that mean that the same standards will be applied across the board in the future? Or is this just a personal vendetta? All this is a political game. Is that what's going on? Whatever's going on, there's a lot of hypocrisy. It's like there's a huge canyon and each side is shouting across and they can't barely hear each other. You're going after my guy and turning a blind eye to yours, which is true. And it's tough to watch. Sometimes I wish that I were more like my uninformed friends, and just didn't know or didn't care and wasn't bothered by stuff. But because it's tough, watching this stuff and no one at least thinking what's going on, it's literally like watching someone you love slowly die of cancer. So what's the bottom line? We need fairness. We need transparency. Targeting someone because you don't like them or because you're biased against them, that's never going to work. And that's not going to end well for anybody. This stuff always gets turned around back on, the people who invent it. We got to understand, others, they're going to doubt us if our actions seem biased. and they should feel the same way. And anyway, that's just my take, guys. Really curious to hear yours in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, most importantly, share the Common Sense Garage. We'll see you in the next one.